Donald Trump and Elon Musk worked together to save a homeless shelter. The sun was beginning to set over a small town where the clang of hammers and the sounds of construction echoed through the streets. It wasn't the typical sound one would expect from a project involving two of the world's most famous men, but today, that was exactly what was happening. In an unlikely turn of events, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, two figures whose names were synonymous with power, wealth, and influence, found themselves standing side by side, working on a project that was entirely out of the public eye, revitalizing a homeless shelter. The shelter, once a beacon of hope for those struggling with homelessness, had fallen into disrepair over the years. The building had become a forgotten place, an old, decrepit structure that no one had paid attention to in far too long. The roof leaked, the walls were cracked, and the interior was cold and uninviting. For the people who came to seek refuge, the shelter no longer offered much hope. It had become another symbol of the system's failures, a place where people were abandoned rather than uplifted. But that was about to change. It all started when Elon Musk, known for his ambitious ventures into space and technology, made a surprise visit to the shelter. He had been in the area for a business meeting when he stumbled upon the worn-down building. At first, he had simply passed by, but something about the place stuck with him. For all of Musk's innovation, he had always harbored a deep concern for issues closer to home, issues that didn't always make the headlines. He had been quietly working on projects to address poverty, homelessness, and environmental sustainability, but this shelter felt like something more personal. The thought of a facility that could provide real, tangible help to those who needed it most resonated with him. And he wanted to do something about it. After a brief inspection, Musk made a few calls. A few hours later, Donald Trump, the former president known for his extravagant business dealings and larger-than-life personality, arrived at the shelter. His involvement, much like Musk's, was an unexpected one. Trump had spent most of his time post-presidency focusing on his business empire, but something about this project piqued his interest. Perhaps it was the challenge of turning the shelter around, or perhaps it was the opportunity to leave a lasting legacy in an area where he could make a tangible difference. "Let's make this place something special," Musk said as the two men surveyed the crumbling structure. Trump, looking around, nodded. "It's going to take a lot of work, but we can do it. I've built towers, I've built golf courses. I can build this shelter into something that will change lives." The two men looked at each other, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They weren't just here for a publicity stunt. This project was real. It was something they both knew could have a lasting impact on their community, one that went beyond their usual domains of luxury hotels and billion-dollar rockets. Over the next few days, a small army of construction workers, architects, and volunteers arrived at the site. The news of Musk and Trump's involvement spread quickly, and soon, donations began pouring in. Local businesses, eager to help, offered supplies, and several celebrities stepped in to lend their support. But the real work, the hard labor of rebuilding, began with the simple act of getting their hands dirty. Elon Musk, in his typical understated style, rolled up his sleeves and started working. Armed with a hammer, he began working alongside the construction workers, helping them tear down old walls and clear out debris. He wasn't just overseeing the project from a distance. He was getting involved physically. His hands were raw by the end of the day, but his energy was unwavering. Musk had always been a believer in getting hands-on with his ventures, and this was no different. Trump, on the other hand, took a more managerial approach. Though he had his moments of hands-on work, he preferred overseeing the bigger picture. He made sure that the financial side of things was running smoothly, coordinating with donors and organizing fundraising events. But whenever he had a chance, he would pick up a tool and get involved. There was something about the idea of rebuilding that excited him, a new challenge to tackle in his post-presidential life. Together, the two men worked tirelessly, each contributing in their own way. Their involvement in the shelter project wasn't about their personal brands or egos, it was about giving back to a community in need. As the weeks passed, the shelter began to take shape. What had once been a rundown, depressing building was now becoming a modern, inviting space. The new design included better living quarters for residents, a communal area with computers for job training, a well-stocked kitchen, and a therapy room for those in need of mental health support. The goal was not just to offer shelter but to empower the residents, giving them the tools they needed to rebuild their own lives. Musk's team worked on integrating technology into the design, installing solar panels, building energy-efficient systems, and ensuring that the shelter could be as sustainable as possible. Trump's team focused on the logistics, securing partnerships with local businesses and finding ways to provide long-term support for the shelter. Together, they were building something more than just a physical structure. They were building a foundation for change. One day, as the shelter neared completion, the two men stood outside, watching as the final touches were being added. The building looked nothing like it had when they first arrived. It was bright, modern, and welcoming, a far cry from the dilapidated shelter it had once been. "This is incredible," Musk said, looking over at Trump. "We've really done something special here." Trump nodded, a look of satisfaction on his face. "We've created something that will make a difference in people's lives. And that's what matters." As the two of them stood there, the first group of residents arrived at the newly renovated shelter. They were greeted with smiles and applause from the workers who had dedicated their time and energy to making the project a reality. It was a moment of triumph, a moment that marked the beginning of a new chapter for the people who had come to seek refuge. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was emotional, as local leaders, volunteers, and residents stood together, celebrating the success of the project. Musk and Trump were both at the forefront, cutting the ribbon that symbolized the new beginning for the shelter. "Today, we've not only built a shelter," Musk said during his speech. "We've built a community. A place where people can come not only to find safety but to find hope, opportunity, and a way to rebuild their lives. This is just the beginning." Trump, standing beside Musk, added, "We've shown that when we work together, we can accomplish anything. This shelter is proof of that. And it's a testament to the power of bringing different people together for a common cause." The crowd cheered, and for a brief moment, the spotlight was not on their past achievements but on the work they had done together to create something meaningful. As the event wound down, the two men stood off to the side, watching the people who had come to see the shelter's reopening. Snoop Dogg, who had lent his support to the project, joined them briefly, shaking hands with Musk and Trump. "You did a good job here, man," Snoop said, nodding toward the building. "This is a real change, a real impact." Musk smiled. "It's not just about the building. It's about giving people the tools they need to change their own lives." Trump added, "Exactly. And that's the power of what we've built here. It's not just a roof over people's heads. It's a second chance." Weeks after the ribbon cutting, the shelter continued to flourish. The partnership between Musk and Trump, despite their differences, had created a model for collaboration. It was a reminder that, no matter who you were or where you came from, everyone had the power to make a difference. The shelter not only provided housing, it became a place for healing and rebuilding. Residents found new job opportunities, enrolled in training programs, and even began volunteering to help others in need. It was a transformation that went far beyond the walls of the building. In the end, the collaboration between Musk and Trump was more than just a publicity stunt. It was a legacy of hope for those who needed it most. And for the people whose lives were touched by the shelter, it was a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected partnerships can lead to the most profound change. The shelter was only the beginning of a movement that Musk and Trump had started. Over the months that followed, both men continued to work together, each contributing their strengths to the growing initiative. The project, initially a single shelter, began to blossom into something far greater, a network of homeless shelters and empowerment centers that spanned across multiple cities. Musk's vision for sustainability and innovation meshed perfectly with Trump's drive for large-scale business solutions. Together, they created a powerful force, working hand in hand to build not only shelters but also pathways out of homelessness. Chris, the young man who had once made a life-altering mistake at a local bar, had been inspired by the project. After everything he had gone through, he had found redemption in this effort. Chris became a vocal advocate for the shelter project, dedicating his time to speaking at events, offering mentorship to those who were going through similar struggles as he had, and helping to spread the message that change was possible. As the network of shelters grew, so did the public interest in the initiative. Local communities that had once been indifferent to the plight of the homeless began to rally behind Musk and Trump's mission. The shelters, now modeled after the original building, offered more than just a safe haven. They were places where people could not only sleep but learn, work, and start over. In these shelters, job training programs, mental health services, and financial literacy classes were offered to those who had nowhere else to turn. And for many, it was the first time they felt that their lives had meaning again. One morning, Musk stood in front of a group of volunteers at the newly opened shelter in Los Angeles. The large building was bustling with activity, children laughing in the daycare center, adults attending resume building workshops, and people sharing stories of their struggles and successes in a community room. "We've done a lot here," Musk began, addressing the group of volunteers, "but we're not done yet. Our goal is to make this the model for shelters across the country. We need to continue pushing the boundaries of what's possible. A shelter is not just a place to sleep, it's a place to heal, to grow, and to transform. We're giving people the tools to change their own lives. And that is how we break the cycle of homelessness." The volunteers applauded, their faces filled with hope and determination. Musk's words had become a mantra for them, a reminder of the bigger picture, the purpose they were working toward. Later that afternoon, Donald Trump arrived to meet with Musk and the leadership team overseeing the shelter project. As usual, he was dressed in a suit, his gold tie shining in the sunlight. There was no mistaking Trump's larger-than-life persona, but when he spoke about the project, his tone softened. The usual bravado was replaced by a deep sense of pride. "We've made something special here," Trump said, shaking Musk's hand. "I've built buildings all over the world, but this feels different. The people we've helped here, this is the real work. This is what matters." Musk nodded, acknowledging the truth in Trump's words. "It's a big project, and we have a lot of work left to do. But I believe this is just the start. If we can change the lives of the people who come through these doors, we can change the world." Trump looked around the shelter, taking in the bustling activity. The place had come a long way since they had first walked through its broken doors. It was now filled with light and laughter, a far cry from the cold, dark space it once was. "Absolutely. Let's expand this. Let's not just do one city. Let's do 5, then 10, then 20, Trump said. His energy was contagious, and the team felt his resolve. The blueprint was already in place for future shelters, and now it was a matter of scaling up. Meanwhile, Chris's work had been gaining momentum. Inspired by the shelter's success, he had taken it upon himself to help mentor some of the residents. One of the most rewarding aspects of his work was meeting people who had walked through the doors of the shelter with nothing but despair and fear, only to see them blossom into confident, independent individuals. One of Chris's first men's was David, a man in his mid-30s who had spent years living on the streets after battling addiction. When David arrived at the shelter, he was quiet, withdrawn, and skeptical of the help being offered. But Chris saw something in him, a quiet determination to get his life back on track. Over the next few months, Chris worked with David, encouraging him to attend the therapy sessions, job training workshops, and eventually enroll in a computer programming class. David had always loved technology, but he had never believed he could make a career out of it. Chris convinced him to give it a shot, and slowly but surely, David began to turn his life around. He found a passion for coding, and with the support of the shelter's job placement services, he eventually landed a job as a junior software developer at a local tech company. "It feels surreal," David said one day as he sat down with Chris for coffee. "I never thought I'd be here. I've been homeless, I've been addicted, I've made a ton of mistakes, but now, I have a future. I have hope." Chris smiled, proud of David's accomplishments. "You did all the work, David. I just gave you the push you needed. The rest was all you." As time went on, the shelter initiative continued to grow. Snoop Dogg, who had previously lent his support to the project, took it a step further by organizing a fundraising concert to benefit the homeless shelters. The event brought together a star-studded lineup of musicians, actors, and public figures who were all eager to contribute to the cause. The concert raised millions of dollars, allowing the program to expand into even more cities. The concert itself was a spectacle. People from all walks of life came together to show their support, dancing, singing, and raising their voices for a common cause. Snoop Dogg took the stage with a heartfelt speech about the importance of community, stating, "When we stand together, we can lift each other up." That's what this project is about, lifting people up and giving them the tools to change their lives. The event was a turning point for the project. With the increased funding and awareness, more shelters were built, more lives were changed, and the movement began to gain national attention. One particularly meaningful moment came when Musk and Trump visited the shelter in New York City, the largest of their shelters to date. The building, an expansive structure in the heart of the city, had been transformed into a bustling hub of activity. Inside, there were job training programs, daycare services, a fully stocked kitchen, and even a small garden where residents could grow their own food. "It's incredible," Musk said, gazing out over the facility. "This is the future. We're not just providing shelter, we're providing a path forward." Trump, standing beside him, added, "This is the kind of thing we need to see more of. It's about creating opportunities for people who deserve them." As they toured the building, they were greeted by the residents, many of whom had found stable housing and employment thanks to the shelter's support. For the first time in a long while, the two men felt a sense of true accomplishment. "I can't believe how far we've come," Trump said. "But we're not done yet. Let's get to work on the next one." Musk, always forward-thinking, agreed. "The next one, and the next one after that. We can keep growing this. We can make real change." Back at the first shelter, Chris reflected on how far he had come. From the man who had once made a terrible mistake to someone now working to help others rebuild their lives. He had found his purpose in life. And the journey had only just begun. As the months passed, the ripple effects of the shelter initiative spread far and wide. What started as a local project between two unlikely partners, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, had grown into a national movement, transforming the way people viewed homelessness and the systems in place to address it. Chris, now deeply embedded in the effort, had become not just a mentor but a leader within the organization. He worked tirelessly with the shelter's residents, watching as many of them blossomed into new versions of themselves, stronger, more confident, and empowered. The transition from homelessness to self-sufficiency was a long and difficult road, but thanks to the resources and training available to them, many found their footing. One day, Chris stood before a new group of residents at a shelter in Chicago. The city had recently opened its own version of the program, and Chris had come to lead a session about rebuilding after setbacks. As he spoke to the group, he saw a mix of emotions on their faces: uncertainty, hope, and even fear. But he knew exactly how they felt. He had been in their shoes once, questioning whether a new start was really possible. But it was possible, and he was living proof of that. "I know it's not easy," Chris began, his voice steady and confident. "But what you have here, this place, this opportunity, it's yours for the taking. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. The question is, what are you going to do with it?" One of the residents, a young woman named Maria, raised her hand. "But how do we even start? I don't have a job, no skills, no resources." Chris smiled, recognizing the same doubt he had once felt. "You start by believing in yourself," he said. "You're already here, and that's more than half the battle. What we're going to do is help you gain the skills and the confidence you need. You're going to work hard, and we'll be right here to support you every step of the way. You'll be amazed at what you can do once you start." Maria hesitated, but after a moment, she nodded. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And for Chris, that was all that mattered. Every small victory, every moment when someone saw their potential and believed in their ability to change, was a win in the larger mission of transforming lives. Back at the headquarters, Musk and Trump were meeting to discuss the future of the project. It had been an extraordinary year of growth. More than 30 shelters had opened across the country, each one equipped with the tools necessary for residents to rebuild their lives. But both men knew that they couldn't stop here. The need for change was too great, the demand too urgent. "We're getting there," Musk said, flipping through the progress reports on his tablet. "But we need to expand faster. We're still missing so many cities, so many people who need us." Trump leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed as he thought about the next steps. "I agree. We've got the resources, the support, and the willpower to do it. It's all about scaling now. But we can't just build more shelters. We need to invest in lasting change. We need to teach people how to create their own opportunities, not just give them a place to stay. Musk nodded, understanding the sentiment. That's the key. We have to focus on sustainability. This isn't just about housing, it's about education, job placement, and mental health. We need to make sure that when people leave these shelters, they are equipped to live independently. They both paused, considering the magnitude of what they were talking about. It wasn't a quick fix. It was a long-term commitment. But they had already started and they weren't backing down. "All right," Trump said, standing up and walking toward the window. "Let's do it. Let's expand our focus. We'll need partnerships with more businesses, more schools, and more mental health professionals. Let's get to work on making this national, no, global." Musk's eyes lit up with determination. Absolutely. This is just the beginning. Back at the shelters, the results of their hard work began to show. Maria had completed the first phase of her job training program. After months of learning new skills, attending therapy sessions, and building confidence, she landed a position at a local retail company. The transformation was remarkable. She had gone from being overwhelmed with doubt to feeling capable and strong. When Maria first started, she had been unsure whether she would ever be able to work again. She had been homeless for years, and the thought of finding a job seemed like an insurmountable challenge. But now, walking into the retail store for her first day of work, she felt a surge of pride and accomplishment. She wasn't just showing up to work, she was showing up as someone who had rebuilt her life. "I can't believe it," Maria said, sitting with Chris one afternoon. "I feel like I've been given a second chance. It's not just about the job. It's about knowing that I'm worth something again." Chris smiled, genuinely happy for her. "That's the thing about this place. It's not just about getting a paycheck. It's about finding your purpose. And I can see that you've found yours." The success stories continued to pour in as more residents at the shelters found jobs, enrolled in school, and began to rebuild their lives. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks, challenges, and moments of despair. But with each success, the program proved that it was working. Musk and Trump's commitment to transforming these shelters into thriving communities had paid off. The ripple effects of their actions were being felt far beyond the walls of the shelters. And while their work was not without controversy, there were those who questioned their motives, who wondered if the shelters were just another form of public relations. Musk and Trump remained focused on the bigger picture. They knew that the only thing that mattered was the real, tangible change they were creating. People's lives were being transformed, and that, to them, was the ultimate measure of success. At one of the larger shelters in New York City, an event was held to celebrate the first anniversary of the initiative. The building had been renovated, expanded, and rebranded. It now stood as a symbol of hope, resilience, and transformation. Elon Musk and Donald Trump were both present at the event, along with dozens of residents, volunteers, donors, and supporters. It was a celebration of everything that had been accomplished in the past year and a reminder of how much more was left to be done. "This is what it's all about," Trump said, addressing the crowd. "It's not just about putting people in a building. It's about giving them the tools to live the lives they deserve. This shelter is a new beginning for everyone who walks through these doors." Musk took the stage after him. "When we started, we knew it wouldn't be easy. But we've shown that change is possible, that with the right resources, the right people, and the right mindset, we can make a real difference." The crowd erupted into applause. Residents who had once been homeless stood proudly with their heads held high, sharing their stories of personal transformation. For them, the shelter had become more than just a roof over their heads. It had become a launch pad for the future they had always dreamed of. Chris watched the event unfold from the sidelines, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. He had never imagined that a single mistake would lead him down this path. But here he was, surrounded by people whose lives he had touched and who had, in turn, touched his life. As the event came to a close, Chris took a moment to step outside and take it all in. The night air was cool, and the city lights sparkled in the distance. He had come a long way from the young man who had made that fateful mistake at the bar. And as he looked up at the towering building before him, He knew that the work was far from over. But he was no longer afraid. He was part of something much bigger than himself. As the year drew to a close, the shelter initiative was beginning to surpass even the most optimistic projections. What had started as a small idea between two influential figures, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, had now become a movement, a force that was reshaping not only the landscape of homelessness but the way society viewed support systems for those struggling to get by. The ripple effect was undeniable. Chris had seen firsthand the changes that had taken place at the shelters. There were tangible transformations happening in the lives of those who once felt invisible. But there was something else that had changed as well. The communities around the shelters. People were starting to believe in the possibility of change. They were starting to see homelessness not as an insurmountable problem but as something that could be addressed with the right support, the right resources, and the right mindset. Musk and Trump had been discussing the success of their initiative in the weeks leading up to the anniversary event. It was clear that they had struck a chord with the American public. The shelters were providing more than just a roof over people's heads. They were offering opportunities for growth, skill building, and a real chance for people to reclaim their dignity. But they both knew the journey was far from complete. "We've done great work here," Trump said as he sat in Musk's office, flipping through the progress reports for the year. "But we need to keep expanding. The problem of homelessness is not confined to just a few cities. This is a national issue." Musk nodded in agreement, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk. "It's not just about opening more shelters, though. It's about scaling the entire model: job training, mental health services, financial literacy. All of that needs to be integrated into the plan. People need a pathway out of homelessness, not just a place to sleep." Trump leaned forward, clearly invested in the conversation. "That's where I think we can really make a difference. We've got the resources and we're getting the right people involved. Let's make this bigger. Let's shift the narrative on homelessness entirely." Over the next few months, the two men continued to build upon the foundation they had laid. Their strategy wasn't just about providing temporary relief, it was about creating a long-term framework for individuals to thrive. Their vision was clear. They wanted to see every shelter become a place of empowerment, where the residents weren't just receiving help but were being given the tools and skills they needed to live independently. One of the core pillars of their plan was job creation. Working alongside local businesses, the Shelter Initiative was creating employment opportunities for residents, not just in the form of menial labor but in meaningful careers. They had established partnerships with several major companies, offering job placement programs, internships, and apprenticeships for residents who had completed their training programs. Chris was now working full-time as the community outreach manager for the initiative, overseeing the success stories that were unfolding across the shelters. One of the most inspiring success stories came from a woman named Rachel, a single mother who had found herself homeless after a domestic violence situation forced her out of her home. Rachel had come to the shelter with her young daughter, seeking refuge and a fresh start. When Chris first met Rachel, she was quiet, withdrawn, and unsure of herself. She had no job, no formal education, and no support system. But she had a determination that was impossible to ignore. Rachel signed up for the job training program, and through her hard work and perseverance, she soon found a position at a local company. The shelter had helped Rachel not only with employment but also with financial planning and mental health counseling, services she had never imagined she could have access to. One day, months after Rachel's first interview, she found herself walking into Chris's office, a huge smile on her face. "I did it, Chris," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I got promoted. I'm not just working, I'm moving up. This is what I've always wanted. I can't believe it." Chris looked at her, a swell of pride rising in his chest. "I knew you could do it, Rachel. You just needed someone to believe in you. And you've proved that you're more than capable of succeeding." Rachel's success was just one of many stories that Chris had witnessed over the past year. It wasn't always easy, and there were setbacks, but seeing people take control of their lives, rebuild their futures, and create better opportunities for their families made every challenge worth it. The growth of the initiative wasn't limited to job training and mental health support. Musk and Trump had been working closely with local schools and colleges to offer scholarships to young people in underserved communities, giving them access to education they might not have otherwise had. By partnering with tech companies and educational institutions, they were able to secure scholarships and internships for young people, helping them chart a course toward a better future. One afternoon, Chris received a call that would further solidify the initiative's impact. It was from a community leader in one of the larger cities where the shelter program had recently expanded. The leader informed Chris that a group of students from the shelter's job training program had been accepted into a prestigious college. These students had once been homeless, had once been unsure of their futures, but now, thanks to the support of the program, they were headed toward higher education. "I can't believe it," the leader said, his voice filled with emotion. "These kids came from nothing. And now they've got everything ahead of them. This program, it's working, Chris. It's really working." Tears welled up in Chris's eyes as he listened to the news. He had always known that the work they were doing was important, but hearing about these students' success filled him with an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. This was the kind of impact he had always hoped to make. As the shelter initiative continued to grow, Snoop Dogg had become an ambassador for the program, using his platform to raise awareness about the importance of homelessness solutions. His involvement brought a new level of attention to the cause, drawing in celebrities, influencers, and community leaders who were eager to contribute to the movement. Snoop's work extended beyond just speaking at events. He had used his influence to raise millions of dollars in donations, host charity concerts, and bring together a network of people committed to the cause. His message was clear: unity and community were the cornerstones of the initiative, and by coming together, they could help lift those in need. In one memorable event, Snoop and Musk teamed up to host a fundraiser at the shelter in Los Angeles. The event was unlike anything the city had seen before, a star-studded gathering of musicians, philanthropists, and activists who were all committed to making a difference. As the event drew to a close, Snoop stood on stage, microphone in hand, addressing the crowd. "We've got a long way to go," he said. "But this is how we change the world. This is how we make sure no one is left behind. We're not just building shelters, we're building futures. Let's keep going." The crowd cheered, and Musk, standing at the side, nodded with approval. It was moments like this, when everyone came together with a shared sense of purpose, that reminded him of the power of collective action. The collaboration between Musk, Trump, and Snoop Dogg had transformed more than just the homeless shelters. They had transformed the way people thought about community, opportunity, and change. The impact of their work was felt far beyond the walls of the shelters. It reached into schools, businesses, and families, inspiring countless individuals to take action in their own lives and in their communities. Chris's journey had come full circle. From a young man who had made a mistake and felt lost, he had become a leader, helping others find their way. The shelters had not only provided homes for people but had given them the tools to create new lives for themselves. And that, for Chris, was the ultimate success. As he looked around at the faces of those who had walked through the shelter doors, who had overcome their struggles, who had dared to believe in a better future, he knew that their work wasn't finished yet. They still had so much more to do. But as he saw people finding hope, healing, and opportunity, he couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of pride. They were all part of something bigger than themselves, a movement for change, for empowerment, and for a better tomorrow. As the initiative continued to expand, the impact of the shelter program reached unprecedented levels. What Musk, Trump, and their team had set out to achieve, transforming homeless shelters from places of despair into hubs of opportunity and support, had proven to be not just feasible, but a movement. More cities joined the program, and more lives were being changed every day. But even with all the success, they knew the work was far from over. There were still challenges to face, lessons to learn, and new ways to improve the program. One of the core focuses over the following months was community engagement. While the shelters themselves were thriving, the initiative recognized that in order to truly end homelessness, it needed to involve the communities surrounding these shelters. They began holding regular town halls, where people from all walks of life could come together and discuss how they could best support the initiative. These discussions were about more than just donations. They were about how entire communities could work together to end the stigma surrounding homelessness. At one of these town halls in Chicago, Chris found himself standing before a packed room of eager listeners. There were volunteers, local business owners, educators, and even former residents of the shelters who had come to show their support. As the community outreach manager, Chris had seen firsthand the benefits of community involvement. The people in this room weren't just interested in helping, they were committed to changing the way society viewed homelessness. "Good evening, everyone," Chris said, stepping up to the microphone. "I'm proud to be here tonight, and I'm proud to be part of a movement that's changing lives. But we can't do this alone. We need your help, the help of the community. The work that we've done in the shelters is incredible, but the truth is, without the support of people like you, it wouldn't be possible. This initiative is about all of us coming together to make a difference." He paused, letting the words sink in. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Chris had learned that it wasn't just about asking for donations, it was about asking for commitment. They needed the community to not just provide financial support but to also offer mentorship, job opportunities, and encouragement. "I know that change isn't easy," Chris continued. "But if we work together, if we embrace the idea that everyone deserves a chance, then we can end homelessness. We can help people reclaim their lives. We've already seen it happen." A woman in the back of the room raised her hand. "How can we get more involved? How can we help support the residents who are trying to turn their lives around?" Chris smiled, encouraged by the question. "Great question. There are several ways you can get involved. We have mentorship programs that match local residents with people who have the skills to help guide them. We have job placement services, and if you work for a company, we encourage you to reach out to us about offering internships or job opportunities. And of course, we welcome any donations, whether they're time, money, or supplies." The room erupted into applause, and Chris could feel the energy shifting. This wasn't just a conversation about a problem, it was a conversation about a solution. The community was ready to take ownership of this mission. They were ready to help those who had once felt abandoned, and in doing so, they would create a stronger, more united community. Back at the shelter, the staff and volunteers continued to work hard, driven by the momentum created at the town hall. One of the shelter's most successful programs had been its job training initiative, which had been implemented with the help of local businesses. As part of the program, residents received hands-on training in fields ranging from construction to customer service to tech. It wasn't just about teaching skills, it was about giving people the confidence to pursue careers they never thought possible. One resident, James, had arrived at the shelter after a series of unfortunate circumstances had led him to homelessness. He had been in and out of jobs for years, but after losing his apartment, he had nowhere else to turn. He found the shelter when he was at his lowest point, and though he initially felt defeated, something clicked when he attended one of the job training sessions. James was no stranger to hard work, but he had always been stuck in low-paying jobs with no real prospects. But after enrolling in the program, he was able to complete a training course in IT support, something he had always been interested in but never had the chance to pursue. "I never thought I'd be working in tech," James said during an interview with the shelter's social media team. "When I first got here, I felt like I'd hit rock bottom. But now, I've got a job. I've got a future. And it's all thanks to the people here who helped me believe that I could do it." James's story was just one of many. With the training, job placement services, and the sense of community that had been created within the shelter, people like James were able to find their way back to self-sufficiency. As the shelter network continued to grow, so did the partnerships that supported it. Musk and Trump had been instrumental in bringing on new donors, securing financial backing, and facilitating the creation of more shelters. But they knew that long-term success relied not just on money but on collaboration with local organizations that were already doing good work in their communities. One such partnership was with a mental health organization that had been working in the homelessness sector for years. They provided therapy, counseling, and rehabilitation services to people who were struggling with substance abuse, PTSD, and other mental health issues. Many of the residents at the shelters had experienced trauma in their lives, and providing access to professional mental health support was critical for their recovery. During a meeting with the team from the mental health organization, Musk and Trump discussed the challenges they faced in getting people the help they needed. Mental health services were often underfunded and understaffed, But by combining their resources with those of the mental health organization, they were able to create an integrated support system for shelter residents. "We can't just provide a roof over their heads," Musk said during the meeting. "We need to treat the whole person. And that means addressing mental health, addiction, and trauma. Without it, all the job training and financial assistance in the world won't be enough." Trump, who had been working closely with the organization, agreed. "Exactly. We need to provide a holistic approach. People can't build new lives if they're still carrying the weight of their past. It's about giving them the tools to succeed, mentally, emotionally, and financially." The partnership with the mental health organization became one of the most important aspects of the shelter initiative. By ensuring that every resident had access to comprehensive care, the shelters were able to provide a level of support that went beyond just basic survival. One of the biggest milestones came when the first shelter in the network celebrated its one-year anniversary. The celebration, which took place at the original location in New York, was attended by a wide range of supporters, including local officials, donors, and volunteers. Musk and Trump both made speeches about the progress of the initiative and the work that still lay ahead. "This is the future we've been working toward," Musk said to the crowd. "A world where no one is left behind, where people are given a chance to rebuild their lives. And this shelter, this initiative, is just the beginning." Trump added, "We've proven that when we work together, we can accomplish anything. This shelter isn't just a place to sleep, it's a symbol of hope, opportunity, and change." The crowd cheered, and for a moment, both men stood together, looking out at the people they had helped. This wasn't about politics or personal gain. It was about something more profound. Real change, the kind that affected people's lives on a daily basis. Back at the shelter, Chris couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. A year ago, none of this seemed possible. But now, the shelters were full of people who were rebuilding their lives, and they were doing it with the support of the community, the resources of the initiative, and the drive to succeed. And as he watched the residents begin their own journeys of transformation, he knew that the work wasn't over. It had only just begun. There would always be more people to help, more lives to change. But for the first time in his life, Chris felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. He was part of a movement that was creating real change. A movement that was going to continue growing, reaching more people, and offering hope to those who needed it most.